we hop on the pod.
Hey,
We got some knowledge. I probably shouldn't rap. It's all good.
knowledge. Hey, we'll get a ghostwriter for the next one. But tonight, here,
Right. Get it put out.
episode 37 of the Block to Block podcast, the best podcast in the world for all things Web3. Here we break down the technology, what's going on in the market, and the ways in which you can benefit. I am NFT and Jai,
And I am Web3 Wayne.
and over here the talk is different.
Always. It's always different. Every single week we talk about different things. Sometimes we talk about the same things because we gotta come back. We it's different because we bridging it, we bringing it all together, right? We bridging
Mhm.
previous episodes, so we won't bring it back. But it's different about how we talk about it now. But what never changes is that this podcast is for informational purposes only. You know what that means? That means by no means are we liable for you losing your cheese, cheddar, mozzarella, provolone? And you want to know why? That's because we're telling you right here, this is for informational purposes only, and you should consult a financial advisor or any other professional that can help you with your finances and get you to making the money that you deserve. So with that, let's get into it.
Let's get into it, man. How you feeling after an amazing weekend? For y'all who didn't watch the last episode,
Yeah.
it was Web3 Wayne's birthday. The big
Yeah.
man turned 28. How you feeling?
Oh man. Feeling like I'm getting closer to 30, man. It's a blessing. It's a blessing. And there's certain parts of my body that may think it's a curse, but it's all good, man. We had a beautiful weekend. Shout out to, my beautiful girlfriend. She blessed me with a beautiful weekend. Nice little getaway trip. I
Mhm.
also heard it was a special somebody in your life's birthday as well. Shout out to the Queen for sure. We call ourselves birthday buddies, but it got to give her a shout out here as well.
Yes, yes. For those who may not know, my girlfriend, Ify, her birthday is the day after Derek's. So it was last Friday. So we had like a great
My
weekend
youngin.
adventure over in New York. So shout out to me for planning and executing such a dope birthday experience.
right. Shout out
And,
to you.
and shout out to Evie. Love
Shout
you.
out to you.
Ah.
Oh, so cute. So cute.
Oh man, but yeah. Uh, even on birthdays we have episodes. And we're
That's
back.
it.
We back to action, man. This I'm really excited for this episode, but before we get into today's episode, we gotta plug you with what we got going on next week. Because as you know, we're outside. The reading
Outside.
team is coming to a town near you, and we're going down to DC on May the 10th over at the Gathering Spot for our entrepreneurship launchpad event. So essentially, as we all know, everyone wants to, well, not everyone, but a lot of us have these big aspirations when it comes to like business and entrepreneurship. We have this idea of creating something of our own and making an impact for ourselves, our family, and our community. But how do you go about doing that, right? Entrepreneurship is one of those things that just seems like there's so many things you have to do all at once in order to be successful. And so, what we're going to do for you is to have a panel discussion with three subject matter experts in the areas of digital marketing or marketing and branding, financials, and leadership and strategy. And we're having that at the Gathering Spot. So, shout out to the panelists. They have a wide breadth of experience and insight. Also, a special shout out to Ty Brown, who's going to be talking about the leadership portion. He's definitely been a great partner for us. He's part of like This Is Good Water, who sponsored our art show event that we did back in DC in October. So shout out to him for being on the panel. It's going to be fire. Like the gems are going to be crazy. And the Gathering Spot is a private social club and professional organization. However, because we want
Uh-oh.
to bring you value,
Yeah.
we was able to negotiate having an invite for 15 non-members. And so with that, we're going to have the Eventbrite in the description below, in which you can have the opportunity to come to this panel discussion, meet with these subject matter experts, network with other entrepreneurs, and even check out the gathering spot because the club is fire.
All
And so,
right.
once again, this event is on May the 10th from 6 to 8 p.m. at the Gathering Spots DC Club. The Eventbrite will be in the description below.
Hey, exclusive invite, 15 spots only.
They're gonna go
Listen,
quick.
they gonna go quick. Get in where you fit in. Get in where you fit in.
Shoot, yeah, it's gonna be a great one. Oh, and we're moderating. I forgot about that. So
Get to
shout out
see
to
us in person. How about that?
us.
How about that? Definitely, y'all pull up, show some love and get this game. We organizing these events for y'all. Of course, this event specifically is for our TGS family. For all of you that's out there watching, definitely come pull up, support. Check out the resources and the game that's going to be given. Man, our last event like this, the Investor Connect, went crazy. Man, a lot of people walked away with, you know, things, in that event, even panelists, getting connected in ways they weren't able to before. So definitely come pull up, show up and show out.
Yeah,
So
the Investor Connect
excited.
did go crazy. Like we had a packed house on a Friday night. Actually, we need to like release some of that footage.
We need to.
Yeah, yeah,
we,
we
we
got y'all. We got y'all.
yeah, 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 yeah,
No,
yeah, yeah. We've been stingy. We've been stingy.
you know, can't keep all the goods forever.
Right, right. Speaking of, let's get into it, man. We can't keep the goods in forever. Let's get into this episode, and we want to kick y'all off in this episode with a very special segment, something that's near and dear to my heart. Y'all know what it is. We're gonna kick this episode off with the quick take of the day. And what are we gonna talk about today? Let's get into how Nigeria has green lit a national blockchain policy to boost its digital economy. Man, it is getting really exciting in this market. There are times where you're just like, man, I am scared. And there's times where you're like, man, the future is so bright. And this is one of those moments where the future is looking really, really bright. The Federal Ministry of Communications and Digital Economy developed the policy according to a statement tweeted by the ministry themselves. The tweet is as follows. The vision of the policy is to create a blockchain powered economy that supports secure transactions, data sharing, and value exchange between people, businesses, government, thereby enhancing innovation, trust, growth, and prosperity for all. What the tweet did not mention is that cryptocurrencies, which the government cracked down on in 2021, is not a part of something that they're looking to really bring into the fold, right? And so this is big, mainly because Nigerians are extremely fond of crypto. They have been, pretty receptive to Web3 in general. And they really want crypto as an asset class to be permitted in the country. The government, kind of in response to that, launched the CBDC, which we talked about last week, what CBDCs are and the kind of outlook there. This is, one country where you see that example, right, that we talked a little bit about last week. So Nigeria launched the e-Naira. We talked about that as well. And actually Nigerians were taking to it, right? Since its launch in October 2021, there's been about 13 million users that have created e-wallets. That's not in a country of over 200 million people. That's not the absolute best, but we're seeing numbers, right? We're seeing 13 million people adopt that technology, right? And that's not something that we're just seeing on the e-Naira side. Crypto as a whole is something that the country has been pretty keen on. So with that, the government really aims to develop regulatory instruments for deployment of blockchain technology across various sectors, and that's really what this policy is looking at, right? So they're really looking to provide that structure for tokenized assets or tokenized coins um, that are backed by equity, debt, or property, but not crypto, right? We want to come back to that. Um, and also in the press release, right, that the tweet is kind of acknowledging, they also really urge the public and private sector to utilize the technology in the healthcare, transportation, and supply chain industries, in addition to financial industry, right? So we're seeing them also push to say, hey, let's broaden the scope of how we're using this technology. This is really something that could be beneficial for our economy, especially on the digital side. With that, they've already, put together an approved steering committee. Nigeria's SEC seems to be focusing on fintech firms registering as digital sub brokers, crowdfunding intermediaries, fund managers, and more. So really bringing the chance for those Web3 firms to kind of officially become a part of the ecosystem, if you will, a part of the economy. And really, this is the first step in what looks to be a long line of regulatory actions to come. So, exciting times in Nigeria. The three main takeaways I want to just give for this quick take is that we're seeing across the board governments are skeptical, or should I say, scared of the potential that cryptocurrencies bring to the market in competing with government currency. We see it in this case, absolutely. Number two, we do see an affinity to allowing tokenized assets, which is something that we're seeing in the States as well, right? Especially with the initial feedback that we got from politicians, kind of giving that guideline, oh, well, the SEC should handle anything that's deemed as a security. And then outside of that, it should probably be the FTC. They've kind of started to differentiate and segment out what's going to be where, but we're seeing a little bit more affinity to the tokenized assets, which are a little bit more stable. And then lastly, Nigeria is gravitating towards crypto and blockchain technology as a whole. We mentioned earlier they were pretty big on the Naira. Nigeria also ranks third in usage of MetaMask, which, if you don't know, is probably one of the most popular crypto wallets in the world. And they've, MetaMask seen this and recently made moves to expand its offering in Nigeria. So a lot of opportunity there. Something to definitely keep your eyes on if you are, scouting a good place to set up shop, maybe as a business, Web3 business, or if you are a retail person and you're looking at kind of those crypto friendlier countries. Nigeria may also be a place where you can kind of start to look towards. With that, that's our quick take for the day. What's your thoughts, NFT and Jai?
Very interesting. Once again, always watch every episode of Block to Block because these stories are interconnected. So if you haven't done so already, please like, comment, subscribe, and share with your loved ones. In the previous episode, we were speaking about CBDCs, right? Essentially, for lack of a better term, like public or centralized digital currencies, right? Or like private cryptos, if you will. You know, when Web3 really came out originally, like with Bitcoin and the advent of like all these other cryptocurrencies, there's a lot of rhetoric around how we could have our own economies separate of governmental influence because of these private cryptocurrencies, right? And as we mentioned, 114 countries are exploring CBDCs, which is really the antithesis of your regular cryptocurrency because it's centralized. Going back to like the Naira, which is Nigeria's CBDC, it's on the Hyperledger blockchain, which, as for you guys who may not know, is a blockchain that is focused on more enterprise solutions for like organizations that want like a private chain. Like they want the benefits of blockchain, but they want it to be private and not like a public thing that anybody can gain access to. And so we're just seeing that replicated here. It's very interesting that the government of Nigeria wants to utilize blockchain technology for many of its gov tech needs because that's very important, especially in these developing countries that have a lot of growth potential, such as in Nigeria. You know, you want to, there's a term called technological leapfrogging when it comes to like global development, which is this idea of you can adopt newest technologies right away to jump leapfrog your development as a country.
Mm,
So with blockchain technology being like along with AI and other innovations being at the cusp of innovation, they could solve for a lot of solutions within the country. So
yep.
that's very promising. However, once again, it is a country that doesn't like that notion of it's more than 200 million citizens having the ability to operate separate from the country's like regulatory arms, right? Like no government wants their citizens to be like, hey, we don't need you. We have our own economy. You can't tax it. You can't regulate it. What have you? No,
Yep.
they're gonna find a way to really undermine that. So here in Nigeria, they like banned or had like yeah, they banned. I think you said in 2021 all these other cryptos, and they have their own CBDC, right? And I think that's the trend that we're going to see in a lot of different countries. You know what we
Yeah.
should do for the show?
What should we do?
We should do a case study series, right? Of like these
Ooh,
different CBDCs because
ooh.
it's not a thing that's going to be going away. There's been a lot more adoption.
Right, right. No, I think
Make
that would be.
us
Hey, y'all let us know in the comments if y'all would like for us to hop into some case studies, dig a little bit deeper, maybe even bringing some experts on some of these specific topics. Definitely let us know if you'd like to see that, who you'd like to see. I think it's a dope idea, man. It's
and
really good for the people.
if you have your own CBDC, if you're some governmental official in a different country and you would love to have the Block to Block podcast host of NFT and Jai and Web3 Wayne in your country getting the scoop for the people, book the flight. That's all.
This is
I'm just saying, man. Listen, I'm trying to go to Lagos, man. What? Hey, take us to Lekki.
you can also hit us up. We'd love to have you on the show on the podcast. Get your take. I think it's big. There's a few words to that really summed up what you said. And it's actually in the tweet in the statement. Uh, you know, thereby enhancing innovation, trust, growth, and prosperity for all. It seems like they understand, the value that the technology brings to their people and to their economy. And so that's something to look at is, how does this change the, societal behavior that the as a whole, how, socially, Nigeria changes from kind of that business perspective with this new technology. So I think what you said is really dope, and that piece is kind of what is all inherently in the technology that they think will really be that platform for them to kind of leapfrog. So really dope, really dope.
Jamaica launched their CBDC earlier this year. We can hit up the Bank of Jamaica, do an in-person interview,
Right.
lowdown on the impact that I'm listen.
Get that dirty one. Your boy trying to get the dirty one now.
No, no. Listen, I'm trying to get us to a global stage here,
Wagwan with your boy. Wagwan.
They like just for that, no.
Don't ever step foot on our any of our soil. None of it.
Oh man, but yeah, thanks for the quick take. That was very intriguing.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, with that, let's transition and talk about Web3 adoption as a whole, right?
Okay.
So let
Okay.
me set the stage for you. CoinDesk, right, which is a major news publication for things crypto and Web3 related. They have an annual conference called the Consensus 20 the consensus conference, right? They just had consensus 2023, in which they gather together all the thought leaders, business professionals, and anybody who's anybody within Web3 into one room just to discuss what's happening within the world of Web3 and crypto, and how do we get more adoption. And in one panel discussion where they have like all these different thought leaders, they spoke about what are some of the biggest challenges right now that's keeping us from mass adoption for the average person, right? And so what we want to do is bring to you guys some of those topics and just have a discussion around what is the issue and how can we move forward. And so with that, Web3 Wayne, I believe you wanted to take the first one.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's one that we've spoken a lot about. It's really, man, oddly enough, how we kicked off this show. This podcast is we talked a lot about this story, and it's one that is a tale of two cities, if you will. So the first challenge that we're seeing in terms of adoption is really in the fact that there's a belief that DeFi is the key to true adoption, right? But the problem with that, the challenge comes in with the trust level. The trust is at an all time low due to the collapses that we've seen in the mainstream media, right? We're talking FTX, Celsius, um, oh man,
Luna.
Luna. There's so many. I mean, even on top of that, right? Your signature banks, right? They're not DeFi, but we're seeing those financial institutions affected by Web3, and so I think that really even your signature bank, right? Like they were pretty heavily invested. It really leaves a bad taste in especially if you're somebody who's been thinking about getting into Web3. Um, that really slows down, any want, any urgency for you to explore the technology. So that's really the first challenge that we've seen is that DeFi is really, a major way for people to get into Web3, but the trust is at an all-time low. Um, so that's really where the challenges begin. Is that probably one of the best ways to get people on, right? When we talk about DeFi, we're really talking about innovative solutions that allow for the unbanked and underbanked to really get into the system and possibly make some monies in ways that haven't been possible before. And then on top of that, people who have money, right, being able to find creative ways to use and grow that money, right? I think that's something that's appealing to everybody, is that I can kind of use these new financial products and use that to my advantage. I.e., right, the stock market is what 30 years old, maybe, right?
Which
Uh,
years old?
but that again,
I say which stock market is 30 years old?
I meant the not the stock market. What am I thinking of? Like the Nasdaq, S&P
Oh,
500, those products, those financial products.
I got you. I got you. I was about to say.
Yeah, yeah. I know the stock market is like hundred plus
Right.
years old. But that was that financial innovation has led to people making a lot of money, right? It's really driven probably a lot of wealth over since its inception. So this is something for Web3 that was seen as a key driver, and that cannot be the case when all of the big head honchos, the big fish, are all being gobbled up and caught by the SEC, and so we'll see what comes of that. But that's challenge one that
Right.
we will have to get over.
And with challenge round one about like trust being at a low, there's two things I want to bring up that really comes out of this. One is cybersecurity, because at the end of everything, as even if we talk about crypto, we talk about other tokenized assets in general, it's all technology at the end of the day. And what underpins technology, the success of technological innovation, is cybersecurity. You got to have your infrastructure in place and your safeguards there as well to ensure that, from a proactive standpoint, you can stop these attacks or these attempts of your system being compromised. And not only from a preventative standpoint, what happens retroactively if you do get compromised? Like right now, how it works is if someone steals your crypto, hey, it is what it is. That is gone.
That's it.
You're not getting it back, right? And that's the key thing that has to be addressed is what can we do from a preventative standpoint to ensure, like, okay, how can we ensure people's wallets don't get hacked, or like these protocols and these blockchain systems don't get compromised? Like, I believe in the, I want to say it was episode 8 when we talked about Binance, when they got compromised for like, what was it, half a billion worth of tokens. And
Yeah.
it happened because they was doing like a like some sort of side chain protocol in which they were like moving assets from like one chain to a side chain, and that bridge got attacked,
Yeah.
right? Like, how do we ensure like those protocols can be protected, and in the event that somebody does get compromised, what organizations, what safeguards can we do to see that their tokenized assets can get recovered? Like, that's
Right.
a big thing.
Right.
Second thing that comes from like this trust aspect, and we as a community of Web3 enthusiasts have to pick a side. We're going to see like these larger institutions, government, and like your banks or what have you, start to come in with their frameworks and their centralized versions of these Web3 products. So, what do I mean by that? Once again, if you watch every episode of Block to Block, we talked about how like JP Morgan Chase, for example, is coming up with their own digital wallet to, like, hold these tokenized assets. And then we also spoke about CBDCs. It's basically the government's version of cryptocurrency, right? Instead of you dealing with a volatile Bitcoin or Ethereum or all these other coins that can collapse in a matter of the day because they're so volatile, like, have our own government approved, full faith backed cryptocurrency or digital token instead, right? And so we're starting to see like these larger financial institutions like the banks come up with these Web3 ish products, and the government as well saying, no, 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 no. In some countries like Nigeria, we don't want you dealing with Bitcoin, and we don't want you to have this autonomy outside our system. Use our own digital currency. So it comes to, what do we want as a community? Do we want like this autonomy, and we had this whole notion of the revolution and not being controlled by central authorities? Or do we want the convenience of the technology, but the same old system in place being like the government and what have you? It's a choice we have to make. And that's really what's coming down. And it all ties in with the fear aspect, because if consumers have been dealing with like the deregulated version, now they're going to start wanting regulation to protect themselves and to have security that whatever currency or asset can is safe.
Yeah. Yeah. Now you broke it down beautifully. What I'm hearing is assurances, assurances, assurances,
Mm,
assurance, and insurance. What can you do to make sure that I'm protected? And um, what we seen from DeFi is that many people were not protected,
at all.
and there were a lot of vulnerabilities that even using FTX as our main example, where we saw millions upon millions of dollars disappear, right? People are saying, okay, well, what happens now? How are we made whole? And so that's going to be something that's at the forefront over the next year or two, as we kind of come out of this space of just completely looking at Web3 sideways. I'm saying we, but when I say we, I mean the consumer. Um, and getting to a point of, okay, hey, we understand there's the opportunity here. How will we be protected? Even if it's a part, a portion, what are the assurances? So beautifully said. Beautifully said.
Appreciate it. And that does segue pretty nicely into the second main challenge within Web3 being the lack of clarity with the regulatory environment. What we mean by that is in the US and many other countries in the world, there's no clear framework of how we're classifying crypto and crypto assets and what's the overall rules for how organizations should operate and how and which regulatory body even enforces the laws when it comes to Web3, right? So within the US, there's like discussion. Is it the SEC? Is it the I can't think of the acronym, but the other regulatory body, like who
See,
exactly? Yeah, FTC. Like which one of them is the enforcement body for Web3 assets? We're still in very much of a gray area. Like they're still debating whether or not cryptocurrencies aside from Bitcoin are securities or not, right? Like we don't have a clear framework, and it's very difficult to innovate and to see what is it that you can do if you don't know what you can't do, right? And
absolutely.
that's really one of the big things that's holding back the industry. I mean, shout out to the European Union because they really right now are like the first region in the world where they have an actual comprehensive regulatory framework for crypto and crypto assets. And my prediction is many other regions of the world, economic blocks or countries are going to like take some parts, some inspiration from that framework. But aside from them, they're kind of like the outlier in this case. The majority of the world doesn't have a very clear framework.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, on the U.S. side, what makes it tough is that it feels like at times the SEC is a little bit all over the place. You know,
The SEC.
that's SEC. Like no shade, but just observation from where we're sitting. You know, recently there was a complaint against Bitrex. That's kind of been the recent news from the SEC has filed a complaint against Bitrex, um, where they're saying, hey, on your exchange, you don't know Bitrex is a crypto exchange platform, and so they're saying on your exchange, like you were you had these tokens on there that basically were illegal securities. One being Algorand, right? Crypto is Algo. Um, and where the confusion comes in is that the SEC chairman, Gary Gensler, has been, quoted, stating that uh, Algo was, a good cryptocurrency that had a lot of promise, right? That's not the statement word for word, so please, don't attack me on that. But he did mention Algo, and if you hear the chairman of the SEC mention this cryptocurrency and what they're doing, you would think, hey, okay, maybe this has some legs to it, and now they are part of that complaint that the SEC has filed against Bitrex, right? So it really just feels like this is kind of no man's land, right? So getting that clarity will help on the regulatory side because people can then begin to kind of shape their strategy without stepping on toes, right? And then also consumers can invest without feeling like, hey, this is going to be upended as soon as I invest into this crypto, right? So um, I think there is a lot to be seen from the regulatory side. Um, you know, definitely kudos to Europe. Um, Kudos to the good people in the UAE. Your Dubai's and Abu Dhabi who have been kind of working to formalize a lot of their processes. We've even seen in Hong Kong, they're also working to uh, bring more Web3 crypto friendly laws and frameworks and regulatory frameworks to the table to begin that process, right? I think that's kind of the important thing, that if you're looking in terms of that regulatory challenge, that's what we're looking at, right? Like, what are you at least trying to put on the table, you know? So there's much to be seen there, to be honest. Much to be seen there.
Yeah, a
But
lot to be seen.
yeah, I think, man, just the complexity of the environment is just, from the regulatory standpoint, there's just a lot going on. But there's also, some other complexities within Web3, which brings us to challenge number three, right? Which is the, complexity of crypto native user interfaces, uh, and how that is stunning the growth of mass adoption, right? So building great user experiences takes time, especially with complicated technology. And right now, we're just not seeing that, right? There's a lot of hoops and hurdles that you have to jump through to even be, considered Web3, and for you to get into the Web3 game and space. And so right now, the user experience is really hindering any real mass adoption that we'd like to see, any real growth within the Web3 space. So this is a big hurdle that will need to, you know, be jumped for Web3 to become really a staple within the economy, within the, technological uh, ecosystem that's been built. But I think what we're seeing with this current environment, right, is that a lot of those big companies that have the resources and manpower to really spend that time to get over those hurdles, they're coming into the game, right? And this is not to knock the startups that are working to solve these problems. I honestly think that's where the solution is going to come from. The solution is going to come from a startup, but that startup probably gets bought by one of these big banks, or one of those bigger quote unquote startups, if you will, your Amazons, your Facebook, and that'll really underpin this next chapter. And that's not to say again that it still won't be the little guys that'll drive adoption. I think one of the biggest things with that's driven adoption thus far is the community aspect, and I think that's what's going to allow for this technology to spread like wildfire once we're able to solve that problem, that challenge of providing great experiences for users, right? Once we get over that hurdle for the Web3 technology, that's when we'll see that, spread into the virtual reality, augmented reality. We'll see it, for shopping experiences. We'll see it across the board. We're already starting to see it. Starbucks loyalty program, right? So we'll see even more across the board. Web3 just kind of grow into a really big thing once we're able to provide those great user experiences to go alongside the user experiences that we're able to provide right now.
Definitely. Yeah, it's one of those things in which technology just has to evolve in order to catch up and provide those better experiences. And that's why, it's very important that organizations have like very strong customer or product feedback loops, right? Like having the ability for us as consumers to say, hey, this is great, this sucks, fix this so we can improve upon that experience, right?
Yeah,
So it's one of those things like that actually probably the one challenge. It's definitely a huge pain point but that's the one I'm most confident in it going away.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, regulation is something that's always going to be tough to get around and tough to work through. I think that like even when regulation is there, like there's still some nuances that lead to, you know, maybe regulations being used as a tool instead of like a tool to kind of attack certain companies, and maybe even make examples. Um, so there's always like some things about regulation that you just can't get around. Um, and then the DeFi aspect, to be honest, I'm not an I'm not an expert in DeFi at all. So you know I could see it becoming a thing, but I really think it's just going to get swallowed by big banks and you know other of course fintech. Like it's just gonna it may evolve into something else, which a lot of Web3 will. But I don't know. I can't see that either. So I think it's a good point. Like how challenge three is probably the one that we see will be most confident that okay, this now that we're gonna get past it, like it's probably gonna be like really amazing once we get there. The other two, I'm just like those are really really just up in the air. I don't know what you think. I just
Yeah, I agree with that. Within the U.S., regulatory environment is going to really depend on which administration we have, right? Like, are we going to have continue to have more of a more liberal, democratic um, presidency and congressional body, or is it going to be like more Republican, conservative? Like, that's going to really because even when it comes to the debate of CBDCs within the US, right, like it's a polarized decision, right? The conservatives are like, no, we don't want CBDCs because of this notion of big government that will be able to see your transaction history with this technology. But then you have more of the liberal side saying, oh, we want CBDCs because the space needs more governmental oversight because of the destruction that's happening, right?
yeah, KYC, AML, know your customers, anti money laundering. Got to make sure people not using it for bad. And I've never heard that with cash. Like we need to get rid of cash because people might be using it for bad. But anyway, that's I digress.
Exactly. So it is what it is. That's why you should always vote. Know which candidate has your best interest in heart. And then
We're party agnostic, by the way. We're not, you know, yeah, that's not our mo.
at all. And and then when the other challenge of just like the trust aspect, that's really dependent on what the regulatory environment will bring out, right? Because if there's a lot of regulation similar to what's happening in the EU, then trust is going to come because we know there's a lot of certifications, a lot of standards, a lot of clarity in terms of how organizations should operate when it comes to Web3. So that's why I'm saying out of these three challenges, the user experience one is the one that's going to go away the quickest, probably within the next 2 to 3 years, honestly.
You heard it here first. 2 to 3 years. User
You-
experience is gonna be amazing.
Exactly.
What do you mean?
Exactly. But man, that's the show right there, y'all. Like, we're definitely enjoy having you guys here just to talk
Yeah.
about what's happening in terms of like Web3 adoption. Once again, time heals all. I expect a lot of these things are going to sort of sell us out, if you will, as time increases. But with that, I am NFT and Jai.
And I am Web3 Wayne.
Make sure that you're one of the lucky few who can come out to our event on May 10th for the Entrepreneurship Launchpad. The link will be in the description below. With that, peace.